Sarah was home alone, enjoying the peace and quiet after Mark had set off for work. She has the day off today. However, as she went to pull the car out for some errands, the garage door greeted her with a screech. Ah, every time she toggled the switch, the mechanism emitted a high pitched metal on metal shriek that was frankly a public nuisance. Now, instead of taking the sensible route and calling a technician, Sarah decided it was time to take matters into her own hands. She retrieved her leather tool belt from the depths of her closet, clenched it tight, and armed herself with a screwdriver. She was convinced the little DIY spirit was all she needed to bypass a $200 repair bill. She spent the better part of an hour meticulously tinkering with the rollers and track. She was loosening screws and dismantling units left and right, entirely preoccupied with pinpointing the source of that excruciating noise. She felt a surge of triumph, certain she was on the verge of a breakthrough. When she finally stepped back to admire her handiwork and test the system, she pressed the wall button with a flourish. But instead of a smooth ascent, the door groaned under the strain and became hopelessly jammed, leaving a gap at the bottom that was just wide enough to invite trouble. Shortly thereafter, Mark swung by for lunch. As he went to leave, Sarah offered him an exaggeratedly cheerful thumbs up. "The garage door is as good as new, Mark. Don't give it a second thought," she called out. Mark looked profoundly skeptical. He hesitated, clearly sensing a disaster in the making. But with a meeting looming at work, he just sighed and drove off. The second Mark's car rounded the corner, the weather took an ominous turn. The morning sun was swallowed by massive charcoal gray clouds. The wind began to howl, and Sarah realized with a sinking feeling that a torrential downpour was imminent. She glanced back at the compromised garage door, her misplaced confidence rapidly evaporating. Then the rain started. It wasn't just rain, it was a vertical river. Sarah watched in utter disbelief as the garage door, which she had assumed was locked in place, began to move upward of its own accord. The haunted door was now gaping wide, allowing huge amounts of rainwater to surge across the garage floor. Faced with the impending ruin of the house, Sarah seized a push broom and began a futile struggle against the water. She was frantically attempting to shove the water back into the driveway, but it was like trying to stop a tidal wave with a toothpick. Within minutes, she was completely drenched. Water was swirling around her ankles and heading towards the storage area where they kept their most sentimental possessions: journals, vintage books, and decades of photo albums. Realizing the broom was useless, Sarah pivoted to a rescue mission. She began lifting these heavy waterlogged boxes onto the highest shelf, her face a mask of exhaustion and sheer desperation. Meanwhile, Mark was navigating his way home through the storm, wipers at full speed. As he turned into the driveway, he was met with a scene straight out of a disaster movie. The garage was wide open, and Sarah was waist deep in a swamp. He sat paralyzed for a moment, wondering how a simple squeak had escalated into a total catastrophe. By the time Mark waded into the garage, they were both shivering and bone tired. They stood together in the rising tide, clutching a soggy, disintegrating box. They shared a look that was equal parts "I told you so" and a complete surrender. The storm eventually subsided, leaving behind water and a mountain of damp cardboard. Mark wasn't taking any more chances. The following morning, he was busy bolting a bright red "Do Not Touch" sign directly over the controls. Sarah was sitting on a nearby crate, looking properly chastened, attempting to dry the concrete floor with a single absurdly small kitchen sponge. And that, my friends, is the pearl of misplaced confidence. I hope you enjoyed this look at some more advanced vocabulary and natural idioms. If you found this helpful for your English learning, please like this video and subscribe so you don't miss more episodes. Before you go, leave a comment. In your culture, is it common to do your own home repairs, or is it strictly for the professionals? I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.